This episode is brought to you by Facebook. So you were scrolling on Marketplace, and there it was, the bike you'd been searching for. You sent a message, and it turned out the seller was super chatty, kind of funny, and an avid cyclist. The next thing you know, you're in a cycling crew. Well, a community cycling group. The thing about Facebook, you might find more than what you're looking for. From a browse to a bike ride, this summer find more on Facebook.
If serial killers were among us, wouldn't you want to know? Did you know the FBI is keeping it secret? There's up to 500 expected serial killers at any given time operating in the United States. Most of them are using the I-40, I-35 corridor and hunting the U.S. national park systems. If you guys don't believe me, look at why you don't see very many modern serial killers. In fact, many serial killers at all are not even admitted to be serial killers until years after they are caught. When you watch these documentaries about all these old serial killers in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it's not that they're gone. It's that they just don't want to talk about them anymore. The FBI and local police like to pretend that serial killers just do not exist, or if they do exist, they're extraordinarily rare, even though that leaves about an average of 10 active serial killers per state. Though they believe that average number is much higher in states that I-40 runs through the center of them, such as Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, New Mexico, and California. If you want one prime example, look at the case of the West Mesa Bone Collector, where 11 bodies were found sitting barely off of I-40 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They believe that the serial killers that hunt I-40 were using this as a dumping ground for 11 bodies, but possibly up to 19 that were found in another nearby dumping area. Now, the reason why they don't like to publicly talk about these is because they are afraid of copycat killers that would also kill people and leave them in those same areas to throw police the suspicion off of multiple murderers and still looking for that, goose hunt of a serial killer. That has actually happened before. In the early 90s, Herberto Seda actually copied the Zodiac Killer because that was a very publicly talked about case, and he copied some of those murders in that same area in the same style, and it actually took the police several years to figure out that they were not another Zodiac Killer's killings, but they were a random other individuals who was just trying to throw some kills into the mix and get the scent trail off of himself because they were still looking for those original suspects. I-40 and I-35 are the perfect hunting ground for serial killers because if you've ever drove it at night, you'll see that there's long stretches of no cell phone service and almost no lights. Every mile of I-40 almost has an exit that either goes left or right. That means every 100 miles that a serial killer would drive, which is only about an hour and a half, there could be a possibly 200 different exits they could have taken with a countless number of branch-offs from each one of those exits. So it is essentially impossible to track down a serial killer on I-40 and I-35. Even if the police know you're taken within 30 minutes, that's already hundreds of possibilities that a serial killer is taken. And most of these interstates and highways do not have camera footage at all. That's why I don't understand why these flock cameras are getting such resistance. I understand what can be so negative and so bad about them, but Oklahoma itself has the highest percentage of missing people that never get found again in the mainland United States. And to me, I feel like the flock camera hate is coming from a lot of propaganda from people who do not want to have their movements tracked. And that's what I really think a lot of it's coming down to. And they are kind of spurring this civil unrest about the flock cameras because they know the more cameras are out there, the harder it's going to be to get away with these things. These serial killers amongst I-40 and I-35 and the U.S. National Park systems are not getting reported because to report a serial killer, you first have to have a body. If you don't know the true definition of a serial killer, it's someone who has killed people on more than 3 separate occasions. It doesn't mean 3 bodies. It doesn't mean they killed 3 people at once. It means they killed people over 3 different situations. It can't be in the same day because that's considered a mass killing or a killing spree. So they have to have a body first. So all these people that go missing on I-40, I-35, the Highway of Tears in Canada, the U.S. National Park systems, none of those are getting officially chalked up to any kind of murders because they're still officially missing. There are thousands of cases of missing people on this interstate that have never seen a trace of them. And we're talking about just since the 90s, thousands of people. When you average that out, it is an insane amount of people that have gone missing and never found, or they are found in mysterious circumstances. The most recent serial killer that's been captured, and he is still just a suspected serial killer, is Luis Gonzalez. They know for a fact that he has killed 2 different women, and their deaths were years apart. And if you look at any serial killers or any person that's committed murder on multiple occasions, there's almost never 6 years apart with their murders. Between these 6 years, he was in trouble with the law on multiple different things, with domestic assault and domestic violence. They are looking for other victims, and there's 2 other women that match the same like MO that he had in the same area that he could have had connections with. So if those 2 women do get matched with him, he will be the most recent serial killer caught, just barely clearing the serial killer milestone with 4 people on 4 different occasions. But there are so many other serial killers, if you want to go down this rabbit hole, that have been caught in recent years that they are still not attributing to being serial killers yet, because they only caught them for killing 1 or 2 people, and they know that they killed more. But it's almost like they don't want to attribute those deaths to them, because then it would make more serial killers be classified. If you are in the Houston area, you are the most likely area in the United States to still have a operating serial killer. Now, there's many suspected operating serial killers still in different major cities, but the Houston bayous, lakes, and rivers have had an unnaturally amount of dead bodies turn up in them, and law enforcement is scarce to talk about the deaths and the cause of deaths of these people. Houston law enforcement has been quick to shut down any claims of a serial killers, but mark my word, in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see the serial killer in that area has been caught, or they'll officially come out and confirm it. I'm sure they're trying to investigate it more and keep the public, kind of panic down. But the bayou system there, so many bodies have turned up and around the same area that match around the same description that it seems that it is a serial killer at work. When you have a lot of drownings that are accidental, they're going to be from all different races, ages, genders, and these don't appear to match that pattern. While there is a mix of races, genders, and ages, there is a unnaturally high amount of them being young Hispanic women. And the last I checked, young women mostly don't jump in the lakes, rivers, and bayous in their normal, going out clothes. They tend to wear bathing suits for that. So the accidental drownings, I'm not buying it. You also might have recently seen the documentary about the Gilgo Beach serial killer that got caught, that really big ogre-looking guy. If you guys haven't known about the Gilgo Beach area, they actually suspect that around 3 to 4 serial killers are using that area as a dumping ground. Not that they're in workings with each other or anything, like they know each other like on the show Dexter. But that is just such a isolated area and a perfect dumping ground that the documentary actually didn't explain that they have found many more bodies in that area. They wanted to leave that part out purposely. But just go look up how many bodies have been found in that Gilgo Beach area that were not attributed to him. It's a good amount. Now, the West Mesa Bone Collector is the one that I'll still warn you guys about. I know I talked about him earlier in this video, but once those bodies were found, the bodies stopped turning up there, obviously. And then about 10 miles down the road, a few more bodies were found that were supposedly in a different MO. So this either says that there's 2 different serial killers, one that just happened to pick up right after the other one left off, or that a serial killer did change his MO and his location in order to throw law enforcement off. Which begs the question, is the West Mesa Bone Collector still stalking the roads of I-40? And does he have other pockets that he has dropped bodies off that have not been found yet? If you guys have not drove I-40 at night, I beg you to do so with a friend and just see how absolutely desolate and scary of a place it can be when you pull off some of these random exits. When traveling I-40, never help an individual that's on the side of the road. Never stop. That is a rule of the road. I'm on the road all the time. For a living, I work on the road. I'm always running the roads. Never stop. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's a woman that's pregnant. You don't stop. There are so many lures and traps out there that they'll set. Women are a big lure. If you guys have not seen some of the more recent kidnappings and sex trafficking hijinks, it mostly involves there being a younger or prettier lure to get a man to stop to help, because we always want to be the big chivalrous man and help. And then it's a setup, it's a trap. They're always conveniently needing help in a very weird place or remote place. And yes, that's the exact place where they would need some help. But everybody has cell phones these days. But also on the flip side, a lot of these stretches of interstate do not have good cell phone service. So if you literally need help, if you are somebody that does need help, they say to get away from your vehicle. Because if you're sitting on the side of the road in one of these areas where there's no cell phone service and you're by yourself, they said you're actually better off getting out of your car and going and sitting in the woods on the side of the interstate. I know that might be scary, but in your vehicle, you're a sitting duck. I have sat on the side of the road in Arkansas like at 2 a.m. before when I had a blown out tire. A car did not pass me for about 25 minutes. This is on Interstate 40. In 25 minutes, somebody can definitely pull over, break your window out, drag you out of the car, and you are gone forever. I promise you. and like they know to look for those spots and to stalk those spots. Stay vigilant out there and stay safe. Try to never travel I-40 at night if you're by yourself, especially if you're a younger woman. Always keep a good gauge on your surroundings, especially when you're in gas stations, because that's most likely where they're going to sight you and then follow you from there. If somebody's flashing their headlights at you on I-40 late at night, do not pull over thinking there's some kind of emergency. You keep going. You keep going until you find another very well-lit town or a police officer on the side of the interstate that maybe can assist them or you. Because at the end of the day, they don't need you. They need a police officer. What are you going to do to help them? Call somebody? If that's all that needs to be done, they can call somebody. There's a reason why human trafficking is the #1 trafficked service and good. It's people. There's a reason for it. And it's because it's way easier than what they lead you to believe with TV. They talk about how there's technology everywhere. There's cameras everywhere. Some of those people that are watching those cameras don't have your best interest in mind. An entire family of 8 has been completely wiped out after this past week on July 24th in Grand Haven, Michigan. What happened is this guy right here, his name is Christopher, and I will butcher this last name, but here's his photo. He completely wiped out himself, his wife, and his whole family. There was 6 children total, 2 of which were not even biologically his. They were adopted. This is the worst possible outcome for what appears to be just a mental snap and an extreme temper tantrum of getting caught cheating. Because what has happened in this, from what reports are saying, is that the wife had actually caught him cheating. She had posted about it online in several different places. She had posted about it anonymously on some places. And then he either left his job or lost his job. A lot of people are saying that he lost his job at the American Heart Association and then went and committed this heinous act. Now, how investigators even got notified is it was actually a call to the fire department because there was smoke coming out of their home. It appears that he took the life of his wife and his 6 children, and then before he took his own life, he started setting the house on fire in various places, and then took himself out. Now, autopsies already showed that it was not the fire that killed the family; it was gunshots. So, I just could not imagine the last moments there that those kids had to go through, because their ages ranged from as young as 5 years old to as old as 15 years old. And like I said, 2 of them were adopted. Like this, they were supposed to be trusted. You know, they trusted this family to take care of them, and this is what happened. It's just a wild situation to see. Like, you know, this guy got caught, and instead of just taking himself out, I mean, and you know, if that's the least you can do, if that's the route you're going to take, is just leave everybody else out of it, you know, or just be an adult and move on about your life. You know, either figure out a way to work through it with your wife if she wants to work through it, or just leave and just start over somewhere else. Like you ended 7 other lives and then your own. It's never going to make sense in this world that we live in. There's probably going to be more details to come out about this, but I really don't know what else could come out. That's pretty much the entire story, I feel. Ancestry.com and 23andMe want to protect criminals. After multiple killers have been caught by people sending in their DNA to all those different genealogy sites, Ancestry.com and 23andMe do not want to work with law enforcement officials anymore. They're actually actively blocking law enforcement officials from accessing their database, leaving these smaller, more public genealogy things for police to be able to look into. So if you haven't heard, the Golden State Killer case was actually solved by one of these sites, and that case had been cold for 43 years, from the 1980s. We didn't know who did it. Somebody sent in their stuff to one of those genealogy sites. The police were able to match the family, and it ended up being this guy. Joseph DeAngelo was caught, like I said, over 4 decades later because some random distant cousin wanted to figure out if they were like part Cherokee princess or something. Like, they just sent in their DNA, and then boom, it was a hit, and they got a match. So they knew that it had to be a family member of that person. They went back and looked at the different suspects and the people involved, and they singled the one out. They're like, okay, this is the only person that was involved in this case that was a suspect, that was a family member of this person. It had to be him. They zeroed in on him, and sure enough, it was. The Helen Przezinski murder was also back from 1980, and it was just solved because, once again, somebody sent their stuff in, wanting to see, you know, if they were part Irish or Scottish. Sure enough, it comes back that, hey, it was one of their relatives that DNA matched that we never could find a match to. So they actually went back in that person's family tree, and they're like, okay, who was in Colorado at this time? You know, your family doesn't live there now, so what relatives did you have that lived in Colorado? Oh, I had uncle, you know, so-and-so that lived in Colorado. Bing, there he is. James Curtis Clanton thought that he had got away with the rape and murder of a 21-year-old college girl 40 years ago, and boom, uploaded, found him, signed, sealed, delivered. He's done. Same thing in the University of Idaho murders. They actually found a knife that had the killer's DNA on it, but they could not match it to anyone. So they kept, just going through, just doing all this grunt work. They couldn't match it to anyone. A couple years later, someone did the 23andMe stuff. There it was. They said it had to be one of their relatives. Like, this was almost a 100% match, so it had to be one of their relatives. So they knew it wasn't that person who submitted the test, but it was somebody closely, like very closely related to them. And then sure enough, they found out they had a family member at the University of Idaho, and they got it done. This list goes on and on. I'm not going to keep rambling on a list. But why would Ancestry.com and 23andMe want to stop the use of that? Like, that's nothing but great things. And it turns out they could actually be sued or something. Like, I don't understand. Like, what is wrong with our world and our country that we have something that would be such a golden gift, and you would only hate it if you had something to hide, that these people could turn in their DNA and we could catch killers from all these cold cases that we've had all over these years. And it would make people lock up a lot more about not wanting to commit murders now, because you don't know, you might get away with it now, but 40 years from now, you might have a great grandniece that turns in her stuff and boom, you're caught. Like, why would they want to block law enforcement? There's conspiracies around this that are saying that maybe law enforcement would use it to frame people, and kind of like alter the results. And I get it. People distrust law enforcement. But we have 3 very famous cases that were on all these unsolved mystery lists for years, and we've solved them in a blink of an eye. I mean, you're talking about millions of dollars of taxpayers' money and thousands of hours of police work trying to figure these cases out, and they went nowhere. And this was essentially, bam, found out for free. In fact, somebody paid to have this done, and we found it out for free. Why would we not want the law enforcement to have access to that? It doesn't make sense to me, and the only thing I can think of is it has something to do with this Epstein file list. They're trying to protect certain individuals. That's what I'm going to go ahead and say and attack 23andMe and Ancestry.com. Why would you want to protect people who are obviously criminals? That it doesn't help anyone else in the world except for them. Did you know that Travis Barker, the famous musician, survived a plane crash back in 2008, and he will no longer take a plane anywhere? He does shows in London all the time, and he lives in America, so he takes a boat to get there. Like, he says no matter what, he will never take a plane again. So if you didn't know about this, back in 2008, Travis Barker survived a plane crash where him and DJ AM, another musician, was the only 2 people that survived the plane crash. About 11 months later, DJ AM died of a drug overdose because he was heavily abusing drugs because of the experience he went through, making Travis Barker the only survivor of that plane crash. Now, how they survived is those 2 guys lived as the plane crashed, and there was fire everywhere. They escaped the plane and essentially rolled through like fire. They had 3rd-degree burns on most of their body. Now, the crazy thing about this plane crash is it never really took off. In fact, actually, they were going down the runway to take off. They blew a tire out. The plane hit and started dragging. Sparks were going everywhere. You got to imagine, though, they're already going well over 100 miles an hour at this point because it was right before the plane lifted off. They went through a fence, across a 5-lane highway, and just into a field. So it never really got any liftoff. At the time, Travis Barker was being the drummer for Blink-182. If you guys didn't know, Travis Barker is a famous drummer that has drummed for many famous bands. But at the time, it was going to be for Blink-182. He said that it's almost been 30 years, and he was talking about this actually for a magazine interview recently, and he was talking about how much it changed his life. Like, he's like, he gets traumatized over so much when it comes to being in vehicles and trains, and he won't do planes period at all. So if he's going to do shows that are overseas, he has to know a long time in advance because he will take a boat. He will not go a different way. Which the fastest publicly available boat ride from the United States to England is about 7 days. So, I mean, he's committed to not taking the plane. Plane ride roughly 10 hours, 12 hours max. Boat ride 7 full days. Because in his eyes, if the boat crashes, he's in the water already. He can just put on a life jacket and there you go.